The Worldwide Space Station, also known as ISS, has assisted in the development of our understanding of the cosmos, created the space economy, and promoted international scientific collaboration. The ISS has been a symbol of science, engineering, and technology for decades. However, not everything can continue forever, not even the ISS. NASA plans to crash the International Space Station into a distant section of the Pacific Ocean in a controlled landing in 2031. But why does NASA crash the International Space Station? How can this be done in a responsible way? And is there anything else to take its place? Keep on watching to find out more. So, why does NASA crash the ISS? The ISS, like the rest of us, is becoming older. This is especially true in space, where the laboratory is constantly threatened by space debris and micrometeorites, and where even the tiniest malfunction may spell tragedy. However, NASA and other partner organizations assess the station's status on a regular basis to ensure its long-term viability. Although NASA's most recent thorough research looked at the years ending in 2028, they are sure that the station will stay healthy beyond 2030. Even if the ISS were in perfect working order, it couldn't stay in orbit eternally without a boost or fuel infusion from passing spacecraft. If such boosters stop or something else goes wrong, the lab will collapse sooner or later. Jonathan McDowell, an astronomer, said, "Basically, any cargo ship that comes to the space station, or indeed any ferry ship, usually has surplus propellant to a certain degree. They have to have propellant to do the rendezvous, and then they can sometimes have extra to do a reboost. If the space station's fuel deliveries stop, it will be at the mercy of Earth's gravity and atmosphere. Everything that goes up has to come down." Because of the station's international nature, it's a collaboration between the US, Russia, Canada, Japan, and the European Space Agency's participating states. The decision to shut it down will always be based on both engineering and politics. Although NASA has pledged to maintain the station in orbit until 2030, its partner agencies have yet to sign on. The destiny of the space station has always been a looming shadow for NASA and Roscosmos, Russia's state space agency, but it has grown larger in the imaginations of space specialists as time has gone. McDowell said, "Oh, we'll bring it down eventually. The idea has always been, we commit to deorbiting it. But my sense is that they didn't actually think through the details until about 5 years ago." NASA envisioned a nominal scenario for the station, in which it is gently lowered into the atmosphere by the end of 2030, in a document published in January 2022 describing methods for transitioning from the ISS to its targeted commercial successors. Although spacecraft afterlives were not a major consideration when the International Space Station was developed, its eventual destruction was not overlooked. That's because NASA's Skylab space station had fallen out of orbit just a few years before, in 1979. The agency had intended to give the station a boost by sending the space shuttle up early. However, that spacecraft was delayed, leaving the 80-ton Skylab stranded while solar activity increased, warming and expanding the Earth's atmosphere, hastening the facility's demise. As a result, the spacecraft fell out of control, leaving NASA with no method to aim the fragments over remote places or delay the spacecraft's descent sufficiently to lessen the size of the fragments. Instead, pieces of the station were spread around Australia, the largest of which was an enormous oxygen tank. The event changed the way people thought about how huge objects depart orbit. According to McDowell, the chance of the space station falling to Earth on its own is significant. The space station is the biggest human-made object to ever circle the Earth, weighing in at over 400 tons. The bigger an item is, the less probable it is to be completely burned away by the environment. The space station is also likely to spin out of control because of its extended solar arrays, which would limit rescue possibilities. The plan is to crash the ISS, but how can this be done in a responsible way? At the 2017 International Astronautical Congress, a group of NASA and Roscosmos engineers presented a study assessing possible disposal alternatives. Their research is based on processes used to deorbit the Russian space station Mir in 2001. The International Space Station is roughly 3 times heavier. However, the plan's gist is similar to how the space station maintains its height during routine operations. Typically, a Russian Progress cargo ship will either burn while attached to the station or transfer fuel to the main service module's thrusters to power the station's own burn. In either case, the station will rise. Progress spacecraft would perform the same thing in a controlled deorbit, but in the other direction, reducing the station's lowest altitude. The service module thrusters might also be employed, depending on the precise array of ships available. NASA officials noted in the 2022 transition study that deorbiting the station will take 3 Progress spacecraft. These precisely planned burns would lower the station only once in its orbit, making re-entry more predictable and allowing management to direct debris to the huge, sparsely inhabited southern Pacific Ocean. The remainder is up to the atmosphere's destructive power. Unsurprisingly, the technique is not without its risks. If something disrupts a burn-off schedule, predictability is lost. The station, which is the length of a football field, will collide with the Earth near Point Nemo in the Pacific Ocean, which has been dubbed the spacecraft cemetery. For decades, Point Nemo has been a space debris target, located around 3,000 miles off New Zealand's eastern coast and 2,000 miles north of Antarctica. Since 1971, the US, Russia, Japan, and European space agencies are said to have sunk more than 250 pieces of space debris in the area. Despite the plot to crash the ISS still has many years to go. For the next 8 years, the ISS will not rest on its laurels. NASA's plans for the next decade include utilizing the ISS as an analog for a Mars transit mission. Robin Gattens, director of the ISS at NASA headquarters, said, "The International Space Station is entering its third and most productive decade as a groundbreaking scientific platform in microgravity. This third decade is one of results, building on our successful global partnership to verify exploration and human research technologies to support deep space exploration, continue to return medical and environmental benefits to humanity, and lay the groundwork for a commercial future in low Earth orbit." The International Space Station is a unique location. In 2014, the first object to be 3D printed aboard the space station was launched. In 2016, NASA astronaut Kate Rubins became the first person to sequence DNA in space. In 2018, NASA's Cold Atom Lab on the International Space Station created the fifth state of matter, known as a Bose-Einstein condensate, in space. Also, astronauts have discovered how to grow lettuce and other leafy greens. In 2015, astronauts tried the first salad produced in space. At the station, they're even growing radishes and chilies now. This might one day be used to assist astronauts in growing their own food on long-duration space missions. The International Space Station will eventually be retired, but is there anything else to take its place? The successors of the ISS may have a less tumultuous departure, though they will still be fiery. For example, Texas-based Axiom Space plans to launch new station modules in a few years and eventually split off from the ISS to build its own free-flying orbiting facility as business interest in reaching space rises and the ISS matures. Axiom, on the other hand, has taken lessons from the space station's tangled path and is already pondering how its facility will finish. The business intends for its modules to be more truly modular than those on the space station, with the ability to simply remove and replace portions in any case, providing the corporation with future flexibility. The design also implies that each module has autonomy over its own destiny. Each module will have its own guidance, navigation, and control systems, as well as propulsion capabilities. So they can effectively fly on their own, and then separate and return via Earth's atmosphere on their own when necessary. Meanwhile, NASA is turning to commercial businesses to assist in the operation of the ISS and the construction of future stations. Axiom Space, based in Houston, has pledged to connect a privately constructed module to the station by 2024. NASA gave Blue Origin, Nanoracks, and Northrop Grumman a total of $415 million in December of last year to build their own private space stations. NASA intends to function as a consumer, paying for the use of commercial space outposts by its own astronauts. So, the International Space Station will eventually be destroyed. Hopefully, it will take place in a safe way. Thankfully, we will be able to enjoy the ISS for a few more years until it is destroyed. What are your thoughts on destroying the International Space Station? Let us know in the comments.